Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
All right, everyone, back in here, all on the San Antonio shoreline, all these back lakes and Cottonwood, all these areas back in here, Big Brundant, Little Brundant, all these lakes here. If you can get into them, or it's right now with the amount of water that we've had pushed in here, you have a great opportunity, especially early in the week, to be able to do that, and you just have to pay attention to the tides as we move through our week. I'm sure that water is going to begin to start dropping back out. But it's pushed some fish back up in these areas. There's been a great amount of bait that's worked back in these areas. All great wading areas, nice little soft. You've got scattered shale beds that are all over in these lake areas. Fish the edges of these little islands that are in here. Fish the little coves that are back in there. That bait's working there. Great topwater action that's going on back in these areas as well. Redfish, trout, you're getting trout of all sizes, anywhere from the dinks all the way up to 17 to 18, and some nice solid fish that are back in these areas. The redfish have been in the lower slot area around the 21 to 22, maybe 23, but it's been really inconsistent. You can find them there one day, and you try to go back there a day or two later, and they're not there. So that's one thing that you must keep in mind. Just continue to follow your bait. Continue to look for the areas that's going to hold your bait. If you got a pinch point, an edge, a point that water flows around to, it's either going to push it with the wind or the current coming in or going out. Those are areas that are emphasis that you would want to look for to throw your plastics, throw your topwater. Down south, supermodels in the magic grass and chicken of the sea have been two really good baits for me, especially with the new moon in place. We're on the first 5-day stretch of that, which is typically the best time frame for that to take place. So begin to continue to look for those areas, look for your bait work in those areas, and you'll find some fish. Up here on the third chain, all the shale that's along this area here, all the way up into the mouth where you come into Mesquite Bay, the big area that's back in here with all this shale that's back in this area here. Wade all this, every bit of it. Wade the edges of it, wade out in the middle of it. Find your bait that's working all in here. You're probably going to either want to throw a topwater bait in this area to help keep you off that shell. If you're really proficient with throwing your baits and you understand how to work those and keep it just off the edge of that shell, bouncing it off of it, great. Continue to throw it, because there's some nice fish that are hanging in, trout that are hanging in here. There's scattered redfish, few black drum as well, which we're catching those on the Little Johns. Again, the red shad has been real good for the black drum. It's not that we're targeting them, but when we're throwing those, we have come across a few of them up in this area here, which has been a surprise. But that said, you can get them on those. That's the main ones that we use to try to get black drum if we're really going to target those. But anyway, best way to rig all this up in here for your plastics, if you're not real super good at keeping it off that, bounce it, is using a weedless setup. Owner hooks are probably some of the best that are on the market, in my personal opinion. Those are really good setups for that. Get you a 4 or 5/0 with 1/8 ounce weight that's on that. Put that on that supermodel and throw that magic grass, throw that chicken of the sea, and work that all in these edges of this shale. These cut throughs that come through these little islands, there's a nice amount of flow, a current coming through that area there. So there's some fish that are staging in those areas. If you find your bait fish that are working these areas, be patient with them. Again, the one thing that's been consistent, it's been inconsistent. So be aware of that. So if you can find these fish up here one day, you go back the next, and they're not there. They've moved on either down the shale, down the shoreline, across somewhere that they may be back there a day or two later. But that's the one thing that's been really consistent. Down here on Newcomb, it's been a few times since I've been up here and for a little bit, so I wanted to go check this out this past week. So I spent a half a day up in this area here and all around Newcomb Bend. This whole shoreline here, great shoreline. It's set up really well for this past week. There's been a nice amount of trout hanging off in that 3 to 5 foot of water area. We've been throwing the bigger baits. Again, we got the new moon in place, so that's the one thing that you really want to kind of focus on, is that profile size of that bait. Water has been off color, to say the least, with the amount of rain and runoff that we have gotten. So one thing that you'll see is that tea stain. So what happens is that brackish water is in there, so your fresh water stays on the top, your salt water still at the bottom. These fish are hanging closer to the bottom where more of the fresh water and the salinity level is where it needs to be for them. So yes, you can still catch the fish in that type of water. You just have to fish them deeper. So that's why we've been targeting fish in that 3 to 5 foot range, especially off Newcomb. You can get the redfish. We've been throwing topwaters, so some few suspended baits up against the shoreline, especially with the tides being up as high as they have been. It's pushed some fish up into these areas, and we have found a few redfish scattered in and amongst all that area up there. Can be caught on topwater. That's what we've caught most of them on, is the topwater. We have a few sprinkled in with the burner shads. The matrix shad has been really good as well, all up in that shoreline area for your redfish. But the main focus, we've been looking at trout, been trying to locate where trout been hanging, and out here on that deeper water again. The supermodel's been good. Magic grass, chicken and sea, my two favorites. Just rigging them up regular with the 1/8 ounce jig head, fishing that little bit deeper water. Fish it just a little bit slower. You'll find some nice fish that are hanging there. The bait's scattered up and through here, so yeah. But don't let the tea-stained water scare you off, because you can still find your fish in there and you can still catch them.
For watching, I'm Captain Larry Bell.